Why do we wear our past like a tattoo? Why do we wear our past like a tattoo? We make a mistake and we label ourselves. I failed, so I am a failure. I lost, so I am a loser. We let a single chapter from yesterday determine the entire story of today. But ask yourself this: does the scar define the skin? Or does it simply show that you survived? This was the heavy chain worn by a man named Torian. Years ago, he had made a terrible mistake. A single miscalculation, a moment of poor judgment, had cost his family their entire fortune. The failure was so public, so catastrophic, that it became his new name. When he walked through the streets of his town, he kept his head down, his shoulders hunched, as if trying to shrink away from the world. But he could not escape the whispers. They followed him like his own shadow. "There goes the failure," the townsfolk would mutter. A child might point, asking their mother why that man looked so sad. The mother would pull them close and whisper, "That's Torian. He lost everything." The emotional cost was immense. Over time, Torian began to believe the name they had given him. He saw himself not as a man who had failed, but as failure itself. The label became his identity. When a friend offered him a small role in a new business venture, Torian refused. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. But failures don't deserve second chances. He stayed in the shadows, living a life of quiet self-punishment, convinced that this was all he was worth. Everywhere he went, he carried a strange burden. It was a piece of wood, a thick block of oak. It had been salvaged from the fire that had symbolically consumed his old life. The wood was blackened, charred, and brittle on the surface. To Torian, it was a perfect mirror of his own soul. He saw its scorched exterior and saw his own ruin. He felt its splintered, ugly surface and felt his own brokenness. He was convinced it was useless, a worthless piece of debris, just like him. He carried it as a constant reminder of his shame, a physical manifestation of the heavy chain around his heart. One day, the weight of it all became too much to bear. The whispers seemed louder, the stares more piercing, the piece of burnt wood heavier than ever. He had heard tales of a master woodcarver named Elian, a man who lived on the edge of town, whose hands could turn any piece of wood into a masterpiece. Perhaps, Torian thought, this master could finally rid him of his burden. He didn't want a sculpture, he wanted oblivion. With weary steps, he made his way to the carver's workshop. The air inside smelled of sawdust, varnish, and something else, something like patience. Master Elian was an old man with eyes that seemed to hold the quiet wisdom of the forest itself. He looked up as Torian entered, his hands pausing over a half-finished piece of work. Torian stepped forward, holding out the charred block of wood. He did not meet the master's gaze. His eyes were fixed on the floor. "Burn it," Torian said, his voice rough with disuse. "It is charred and ugly. It's worthless, just like my life. Please, just throw it in your fire and let it be gone." Master Elian looked not at Torian, but at the piece of wood he offered. He reached out with a steady, wrinkled hand and took it. He turned it over and over, his fingers tracing the deep black grooves and the cracked, ashen surface. He held it as if it were a rare gem, not a piece of fire-damaged scrap. Torian waited for him to toss it into the nearby hearth. Instead, he looked at Torian, his gaze kind but direct. "It is burnt, yes," Elian said, his voice calm and even. "But that is just the surface." He picked up a sharp, gleaming chisel. Torian flinched, expecting the master to strike the wood and shatter it. But Elian's movements were precise, gentle. He angled the blade and began to scrape away the black, charred layer. The sound was a soft scratch, like fallen leaves skittering across stones. "The fire happened to the wood, Torian," the master said, never taking his eyes off his work. Tiny black flakes began to fall away onto the bench like dark snow. "The fire is not the wood," Torian watched, mesmerized. He had only ever seen the blackness. He had assumed the fire had consumed it completely. But as Elian worked, something impossible began to happen. Underneath the layer of ash and char, a sliver of color was revealed. It was a deep, rich, golden brown, the unmistakable hue of healthy oak. With each pass of the chisel, more of the black crust fell away, and more of the vibrant, living wood beneath was exposed. Ilian paused and looked at Torian. He gestured from the pile of black flakes on his bench to the golden wood now emerging. "You have let your mistake become your name," he said softly. "You have stared at the ash for so long that you have forgotten the oak. But look," he tapped the solid, golden part of the wood. "The wood beneath is still strong. In fact, it was protected by the burns. The fire scorched the outside, creating a hard shell. It saved the heartwood from being destroyed." Elian's words landed with the force of a physical blow. Torian stared at the block of wood. The master was right. The charred layer, the very thing Torian had seen as a symbol of its ruin, had actually been its salvation. It had shielded the core from the worst of the heat. The old carver continued, his voice resonating with profound truth. "Your past is just the outer layer, Torian. It is the dust of what happened. It is the ash left behind by the fire. It is not the core of who you remain. You are not the ash, Torian." That was the moment. It was not a gentle dawn of understanding, but a sudden, brilliant flash of lightning in the long darkness of his mind. The ash. He was not the ash. He was the oak. Torian looked at the piece of wood on the bench, truly seeing it for the first time. He saw the ugly black crust he had carried for so long, and then he saw the stunning golden heartwood emerging from it. He was not his mistake. He was the person underneath the mistake, the person who had survived it. The label failure was just soot. It was just ash he had forgotten to wash off. A single tear escaped his eye and traced a path down his dusty cheek. He felt it slide through the grime, a clean track on a dirty surface. It was a feeling of release, of cleansing. It was the first rain after a long, bitter drought. He finally understood. The past did not have to be a chain. It could be a shield. It did not have to be a brand. It could be a lesson. He had survived. And what survives is stronger. Weeks turned into months. The story of Torian began to change. In the final scene, we see him walking through the town square once more. His head is not down. His shoulders are not hunched. He walks with a quiet confidence, a gentle smile playing on his lips. As he passes a group of merchants, one of them whispers to another, just loud enough for Torian to hear, "There goes the failure." In the past, those words would have been a dagger to his heart. He would have flinched, his spirit shrinking inside him. But now, Torian stops. He turns his head slowly and looks at the men. He does not glare. He does not scowl. He simply smiles. It is a smile of understanding, of peace. He does not accept the name because he knows it no longer belongs to him. It is just ash. He is the oak. He continues walking, his head held high, and in his hand he carries a small, exquisitely carved object. It is a bird, its wings outstretched as if in mid-flight. It is carved from a piece of wood with a beautiful, deep golden grain. If you look closely, you can still see a few dark streaks from the fire, not as blemishes, but as a part of its unique and powerful story. He had not burned the wood. He had transformed it. He had reinvented himself. The moral is that we are not defined by what happened to us, but by who we choose to become. Our past mistakes are merely the ash on the surface. The core of who we are remains strong, waiting to be revealed. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe for more stories that help us find the strength within.